Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Last week, we contemplated the well-known story of Martha and Mary. Traditionally, this story has been offered to show the two classic approaches to salvation. The first through action, and the second through prayer. The excuse of the Marthas of this world has always been, the Church needs its Marthas too. Treatises, moreover, have been written to justify the Martha approach to piety, praising her self-sacrifice as, perhaps, an even higher demonstration of devotion. Thus do the unmeditative in religion try to justify themselves. Yet, the fact remains that Jesus rebuked Martha. Elsewhere, moreover, he spoke of the virtue of feeding the hungry, curing the sick, and housing those who were homeless. It wasn't that he disapproved of serving people. Wrong attitude was the object of his criticism. What he was criticizing was forgetfulness of the true goal of right spiritual action. Good deeds, outwardly, without inner communion with God, will result in good karma, but will not bring final freedom from all karma. The path to inner freedom was described by Paramahansa Yogananda in these words: be always calmly active and actively calm. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, the 2nd chapter, he who is not shaken by anxiety during times of sorrow, nor elated during times of happiness, who is free from egoic desire and their attendant fear of anger, such a one is of steady discrimination. Do your duty in life, so counsels this scripture elsewhere, but never lose sight of him to whom all action should be dedicated. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. So, if we look to our own daily schedule, then we see that maybe 15% might be dedicated to meditation, quite a bit to sleeping, and most of it to interacting with the world in one way or another. We interact with other people, we do our activities, which makes it more important to be aware of our actions during the day. And so the world can be a mirror for us. It has its tricks to get us out of our center, to delude us, to let us forget who we truly are, where we came from, where we really want to go to. But at the same time, it gives us the opportunity to overcome these obstacles and to practice that presence of God. And while we look at the world, we can see, as Swamiji beautifully said in his song, he said, wind on a hill sounds lonely if you're sad, free if you're free, cheerful if you're glad. So what does that mean? It means that what's happening within us, we will see in the world around us. And if we're not aware of it, we might get into some kind of vicious circle, like I feel sad, and then suddenly I go outside and I see everybody sad, and I think the whole world is a very sad place, and I become even more sad, and I see more sadness around me. But if I can see that what I see around me is a reflection of what is within, I can counter that. I can do something about it. And what we see also, if we work with others or if we're acting and something is not working, we see that something is not working in ourselves, something is not working in our attitude. For example, for me, I work a lot on the computer, and electricity has this sensitivity to feel if you're on the right track or not. So if I'm too anxious to get something done, I can be sure that it's not working. An hour or 2 hours, it will be deleted. Nothing's left of it. And I know, okay, I need to calm myself. Like Paramahansa Yogananda said, be calmly active, actively calm. Now, how can we be calmly active and actively calm? It means that we don't have any expectation of the outcome of what we are doing. Because when we have expectations or desires or even fears, we'll always be busy like worrying about what's going to happen, and we'll run and we do all kinds of crazy things to get happen what we want to happen or to prevent from what we don't want to happen. So we want to be cheerful and even-minded in all circumstances, and it's a big project for us. It's a tough one. But what can help us is to see that everything that happens in our life is for our own good. That God gives us the situations that are perfect for us. And a beautiful story, and you might know it, but I just want to tell it because it's a perfect example. It's of a king and his advisor. And this advisor has one advice. Everything happens for the best. And so one day, the king and the advisor go out on a hunt. And by accident, the king shot an arrow in his foot. Ow! And he goes to his advisor, "Oh, what happened? What do you think of this?" Everything happens for the best. Well, the king, you can imagine he was not amused. Put him into prison. So, advisor into prison. And the king, he goes to prison. He says, "So, now what do you think?" Everything happened for the best. Still not amused, so he left him in prison and he went on a hunt by himself. And during that hunt, it happened to be that some tribes were around and were looking for a human being to sacrifice. So they found the king, they took him with them, and they were ready to start a ritual, offer him to Kali, and then they realized there was a wound on his foot. Well, they couldn't offer something that was imperfect, could they? So they dumped him back in the jungle, and the king realized something. There was something good in that arrow. So he went back to the advisor. He said, "I'm so sorry, I put you into prison." "Oh, no," the advisor said. "If I wasn't in prison, I would have been with you on that hunt, and he would have sacrificed me instead of you." So it's a it's really a funny story, and in this case, it's very obvious. He gets the lesson quite soon. But in a lot of cases, this doesn't happen. But it is true that God knows what he gives to us, that it's for our own liberation. And when we're suffering, we might wonder, well, God, where are you? Don't you love me? You love me. Why would you want me to suffer if you really love me? But he has a bigger perspective than we do. He knows that suffering is just this tiny dot, this tiny on this vast, vast screen of eternity. And he knows that if we can get rid of all these little dots, we'll have eternal joy, eternal freedom. So we have to keep that in mind. We have to keep that bigger perspective. And whenever we face an obstacle, whenever we face, some friction maybe with someone, just realize this. Realize that you're not on the right track, you've lost perspective. Because if let's say I'm doing a project with Blazy, and she says something that she wants to do in a project, but I didn't have that in mind, and I get upset with that, it means I'm not in attunement with the divine plan. I'm not trying to feel what is trying to happen, and I lost perspective because I wanted that eternal freedom. If you ask yourself every time something difficult happened, what was my true goal in my life? What did I really want? Because, we that have taken that decision to follow the spiritual path, the answer will probably be, I want freedom. I want that love of God. I want to find that freedom in God. So if we take in the little things that happen in life, we try to take a step back and just look, what was what I really wanted? And then all these little things, they don't matter so much anymore. You can say, Blazy, your idea is fine. Let's try it. You don't mind so much anymore because it doesn't interfere with that goal. It actually helps you to just let go, because anger, sorrow, they all keep you away from that happiness. So let's try to make this determination to remind ourselves, what is it that we truly want in life? And remind ourselves to remember this, even in the difficulties, small and big. Jai Guru.
Hello, everyone. This story of Martha and Mary, Martha and and so it begins. This story of Martha and Mary, it came up this week, also came up last week. If you were here for Jamal's satsang, you remember. So there's some importance to that. And last week, as Jamal was giving his satsang, it reminded me, I've been to such situation myself, somewhat. So I wanted to start with that story. In 2014 and 15, I used to spend a lot of time in Gurgaon. I lived there. And nearby, in Dehradun, there was a saint which I very much enjoyed visiting often. I would go, I would spend a few days, even a week or two with him, and go back to Gurgaon. Now, there's after a while, he did a satsang. Every day he did a satsang around 6:30. People started coming maybe 15 minutes before, and I made it a point. I would always get there half an hour before anybody else was there. For some reason, I was cheeky enough to do that, and it was fine. And he was there sitting, often inside, often in his garden, and he would have me sit with him, and he would have one of his disciples, one or two, bring me chai, bring me this, bring me that, do you want sugar? Okay, go get it for him. And I was always feeling very restless, right? It's like such an uncomfortable feeling. I wasn't even his disciple, I just liked to be with him, and there he was having everybody do these things. And every time I would just try to get up and do something for myself, he would say, no, you sit here. No, you sit here. So this went on until I kind of resigned myself to my fate and learned to enjoy Om Swaha, whatever is. So now after a while, this happened over 2 years in many different visits. After a while, this disciple who would make the tea, she thought, well, why should he be the only one who gets tea? Let me make let me make extra and I'll give to everybody as they come. So now what happened, I would get there first, would have my tea, but everybody as they came, they would also have a cup of tea. By now I was fairly calm in myself and I wasn't restless at all. And I realized, well, let me help do something for these people. Just a little service and also help the satsang get started because everybody takes their time now. So I started to get up after a while. At certain time, I would get up and pick up everybody's cups and plates, take it to I would wash it actually. I would also wash it, yeah. And I felt very happy in it. And this time he would allow me to do so. He didn't say anything. He was happy. Now more time passed. I kept doing this day after day, week after week, month after month, and more time passed. And at some point I thought, maybe just once I'll just sit here. I used to sit, I'm here. I would sit here. He was like right there. Maybe this once I will just sit and let everybody take care of their cups. Why do I have to do this every time? And what do you know? This time, after, it was the time for me to do this, he looks at me. Aren't you going to pick up the cups? Yes, sir. I got up and ran. And then more time passed, and after a while his health started to, his health was deteriorating very rapidly, mental and physical health. And I was by then enough somehow attuned to his state of being at the moment that I could see, the more he felt sick, the more he needed help, the more I could see there was a whirlwind of activity around him. All of the devotees would run here and there, trying to serve him, helping do this, helping do that, helping, bring the tea, trying to be as efficient as possible. But I could see that it was not helping him at all. In fact, there was so much restlessness in the air that it was affecting his health. It was affecting his mind. He couldn't focus on. He was starting to have Alzheimer's, so it didn't help him focus at all. So I made the point now. I would not get up anymore. I would just sit there like a rock in front of him, and that helped him. That gave him something to focus, and he was grateful for that. So and then, he passed after some time. So here we have same situation, 4 different phases, we could say. I wanted to help, he didn't let me. I wanted to help, then he let me. Then I wanted to stay sitting and he would send me to do something. I wanted to stay sitting and he would be grateful for it. So what was the difference in between all of this? Well, at the beginning, I wanted to help out of restlessness, so that he didn't accept. Then I wanted to help out of being helpful, and that he let me do. After that, I wanted to sit down out of whatever, tiredness or whatever I was feeling at the moment, and he said, no, 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 no. But then again, I wanted to sit down because it was out of love, out of being helpful, and he allowed me. So what changed every time was the attitude. So I think Swamiji mentions it in this reading also. Eventually, we talk about work versus meditation, but eventually that which helps us realize what is the right thing, whether work or meditation, whether it is right to do, is always our attitude. That's the key point. Yesterday or some 2-3 days ago, whatever it was, Surya and I were talking that you come to Ananda, you feel like you have nothing to do, you want to be helpful, let 1 month pass, then you have enough, give it 2-3 more months and you have double that you think you can handle. And why should it be so? I mean, there's Aditya's laughing, Blaise is slightly smiling. They're the even Zinya, they're the culprits of this. But why should it be so? It is not a measure of our spirituality how much we do, but it is a measure of our spirituality how we take it. What attitude is developed through this challenge. Eventually we realize we can anyway, but when we think we can't, then that's the moment to see what attitude did you have. And it's really helpful. There's somebody gave this analogy or this explanation at some point. I thought it was really great, so I'm repeating it here, but it's not mine. So copyright given to the proper person. Imagine you're a yogi, you go to a cave, you meditate 6 hours a day for 10 years. Now, that's quite an accomplishment. Let's not make any mistake, but you meditate 6 hours a day for 10 years, and after 10 years you realize, I don't get angry anymore, I don't get jealous anymore, I really moved up the ladder, right? I really developed. And then this fellow said, but you're in a cave, you're alone, what is there to be angry about? You're not going to be angry with your cave. You're not going to be jealous because the walls can sit so still. It is only when you come back, you get into the packed bus and somebody kicks you in the foot. Then you realize whether you have advanced something or not. So, going back to this double what you can handle, and even just living in the world and serving and going through that whole experience, it can be an obstacle, but what did Master say? There are no obstacles, there are only opportunities. And in this case, the opportunity is that it lets you see really clearly where we stand. In the cave, we cannot see where we stand most of the time. Advanced yogis, they can, but many can't. Lets us see where we stand. And it also provides us with the opportunity to work on those attitudes. If you know it's there, then you can work on it. Otherwise, you don't know. So I wanted to share a few thoughts on how to develop those right attitudes. And the other day we were at Promilaji's satsang, and something very interesting came up, which was the thought of keep it simple. Somebody asked a question about a complex situation. How do I deal with it based on these teachings? And I thought, well, if we study math, right? We cannot go to calculus right away. We first learn to do addition and subtraction and multiplication, division. We go to square root, whatever we go through, functions, whatever. We don't pretend to start with calculus first without knowing the basis. So in the spiritual path also, how can we, eventually it will come the time that there's a complex situation and we know what to do. But until then, what can we do? And I thought, well, what we can do, and I thought this because I have applied this also in my life, when I remember, is keep it simple. Meaning, we have many teachings from our masters which are like axioms. They are points. They're Environment is stronger than willpower. We know that. We know we must be forgiving. We have the teaching that give the other person the last word from Swami, etc., etc. We know these things to be true, and based on that we build our understanding, but this understanding can be flawed. So why not go straight to those teachings and apply them when necessary while we acquire this power to take on the more complex issues. For example, there's a good friend of mine who I'm not going to name, but it's in this room and he knows I'm talking about him. He has dedicated his life to master inwardly and outwardly. And you see him running around doing all sorts of things, doing people's biddings and all. And he always has a smile. Sometimes he looks a little tired, but always has a smile. And once I commented this to him, I'm so, it's so inspiring to me to see you running around so much and seeing you always with a smile. And he says, I have trained myself to say yes to everything that's asked of me before I have the time to think too much. That is a very important teaching to an extent, because the intellect, usually until it's disciplined, usually all it gives us are excuses. At the beginning, you have to say yes because that's the right thing to do. But then you start thinking, well, but it's also right for me to take a rest. Didn't Master say recreation is part of an important thing? Yeah, but Swami says service is anything until it'll give you energy. Yes, but Master said, but Swami said, they can go in opposite sides of the same argument. So I thought that was very admirable. Say yes first, and then before you have too much time to think about it. One other thing that came up last time is this, this tendency of Master that he allowed always people, not his disciples, but always people to have the last word. And think about it, it's such a nasty habit we have that we always have to put our last word there. We don't agree with something, with Blaze's idea, for example, we have to say something, but, take a step back. What do you gain by that? Really nothing. Actually, we do gain something, which is some ego we gain. And by saying nothing and letting the other person have their way, we usually lose absolutely nothing, except again, we lose some ego. So in the same way, we can look at situations in life and go back to the basics. Okay, what happens? This person has hurt me, this person has betrayed me, this person this or that, or this has happened. What do I know that are the basics of our teachings? I must forgive. The mind will tell you all the reasons why you shouldn't forgive and why it's good for them spiritually. They should listen to what they're doing wrong, etc. Forget it. When you're a guru, you will know. Until then, it's safe to just forgive and forget about it. Don't forget, you may not be able to trust that person anymore. That's okay, but you forgive them. Something very sad happens. Don't think about it too much. You know that we're supposed to be joyful, so be joyful. Don't think about it. So, that's a very nice approach. Go back to the basics and stick to them, and gradually the ability to deal with more complex situations, it does come. But so as it goes, and in this way, the topic of work versus meditation, this is ways to develop our attitudes. So in this work versus meditation, it just becomes work and meditation, isn't it? Because with the right attitude, our activity will be a sort of meditation. It will be helping our meditation in more than one way, and our meditation, of course, we know it will help our activity. So I was thinking at the end of the day, to have a balance in between work and meditation. It doesn't mean that you have to set, okay, I have 2 hours of meditation and 6 hours of service, or maybe 6 hours of meditation, 6 hours of service, 6 hours of sleep, and 6 hours of recreation. That's ridiculous. I mean, you may hear it at some point, but usually somebody trying to make a point. It's not to be taken literally. The right balance, I thought, is that you meditate as much as you must and you work as much as you must, so that everything, both work and meditation and recreation, everything leads you to that goal. The goal being that eventually all we want to do is that we meditate. Why do we meditate? Because we love God. Why do we serve? Again, because we love God. And even why do we recreate? Because we love God and we want to have fun with Him. So that's the point which we want to reach. And in that way, it's very beautiful. Everything leads you to the same goal and everything leads you to that freedom.